It's great that you're all here to learn from this wonderful panel of experts we have in the grant making field. Looks like we're in the home stretch of meeting strictly over Zoom, and we can't wait to see you in person again. But we're really grateful that we can have wonderful programs in the meantime. I'm going to just tell you about a couple of them really quick. The first one is, well, after today, is July 8th. We'll have a great panel, and the topic will be walking the path towards board diversity. We'll have Dr. Renee Rubin-Ross, and she's a recognized leader on board and organizational development. She's also the director of Cal State East Bay Nonprofit Management Certificate, and she teaches board development and grant writing for the program. We have Dr. Lydia Evans-Hughes, and she's an expert in processes and working with boards. And we have Jim Taylor from BoardSource, and he's the Vice President of Leadership Initiatives. And so we expect that to be a wonderful program talking about how we know that creating board diversity is not just okay, we're going to do this now. It's a process. And how do we get there? And so that's what that topic is going to go into. A little later on the 20th of the month of July, we're going to have a paid program. And, you know, our prices are really, really low. And we have an early bird special. If you book by July 12th, you get a great discount. And if you're a member, you get an even greater discount. And that will be walking the path towards board and organizational inclusivity with Dr. Lydia Hughes Evans. And that'll be a working program where she will actually lay out the different steps and that you need to take in order to not just get an inclusive board, and a diverse board, but actually how to have it be inclusive and how to keep it going. Like, what are the steps you actually need to take to get there? So it'll be more in depth. And then in August 12th, I'm really excited about this. We have Lisa Barr. She's the regional director of the West National Philanthropic Trust. And David Russo, he's the senior director of planned giving and corporate relations with the Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County. If David has talked at a couple of our programs in the past, he's a wonderful speaker just to listen to in general. But what they're talking about that day is leveraging donor advice funds for fundraising success. You know how those donor advice funds are kind of mysterious and seem somewhat removed from all of us. And so they're going to do a presentation on how to be able to access them and use them for estate planning purposes and how you can accept complex assets, etc. So we hope you will join us, and we look forward to today's program as well as the upcoming ones. Now, at this point, I'm really excited to get our program going. I'm going to introduce Carolyn, who is going to introduce our panel, and we'll get this meeting started.
All right, thank you very much, Kathy. I'm Carolyn Siegfried, board chair for the Tri-Valley Nonprofit Alliance, and I'm very grateful for all our outstanding panelists who have joined us today. So with us today is Nadine Horner, and she's the external relations officer for the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. Before moving to Livermore in 2001, Nadine worked in Washington, D.C. for more than 15 years, including as the director of the American Society of Association Executives, the leading organization for nonprofit management in the country. Nadine holds an MBA and also a certified association executive, is a certified association executive. Nadine has directed and served on many national, state, and local nonprofit boards, including those for diverse Tri-Valley organizations and the laboratory. Nadine served as the 2014 president of the LLNL Women's Association, representing more than 2,000 women on issues of equal pay and roles in leadership. Allison Magee is executive director of the Zellerbach Family Foundation. She sits on the board of Northern California Grantmakers, where she also served as the board chair from 2019 to 21. Allison is a current member of the San Francisco Mayor's Blue Ribbon Task Force for Juvenile Justice Reform. Allison previously worked for the City and County of San Francisco, where she served as a leader in strengthening services for system involved in youth and their families. In 2010, Allison was awarded Spur's Good Governance Award for her work at the Juvenile Probation Department. Allison has also worked for Mayor Gavin Newsom's office, now Governor Newsom, of Budget and Policy, and the U.S. Department of Justice of the Inspector General, where she won the Inspector General's Excellence Award in 2003. Allison holds a master's degree in public policy and administration and a master's degree in social work, both from Columbia University. Her bachelor's degree in political science is from San Francisco State University. Allison lives in San Francisco with her husband and 2 sons. Terry Mock is communications manager for the Clif Family Foundation. She advocates for and amplifies the work of grassroots grant recipients to shine the spotlight on community work that has a positive impact on society. She specializes in humanizing complex societal issues by distilling an organization's or client's story into a message that resonates with diverse groups. Terry's goals include connecting seemingly disparate groups and audiences to help them see their similar missions, challenges, and potential successes. Davis Parchment is Director of Partnerships with CANDID, and in her current role, Davis is responsible for elevating and expanding the reach of CANDID across the Western region by building partnerships and strategies that strengthen the social sector through comprehensive data, training, and insights on philanthropy. Previously, Davis has been manager of global projects and partnerships, executing a wide range of projects that use data to drive decision-making and advance knowledge for the sector, including establishing the Get on the Map campaign, a national philanthropy data improvement effort. Her work in various nonprofit organizations has included in fundraising, nonprofit management, education, and international development. Davis holds a bachelor's degree in economics and philosophy from Mount Holyoke University College and a master's degree in education from Harvard University. Rachal is senior manager for community relations with the Clorox company. She has experience in various industries, including work in nonprofit, education, and financial services. In her role at Clorox, she is responsible for managing the Clorox Company Foundation's grant-making activities and external community relations. She also serves as the Clorox representative to nonprofit and community partners. Nichelle also serves as the co-lead of Clorox Black Employee Resource Group, Believe. She serves on the board of Leadership Oakland Alumni Association and volunteers with several nonprofit organizations. She holds a BA in Interdisciplinary Studies field with an emphasis on minorities in education from the University of California, Berkeley, where she graduated with high honors and was a McNair Scholar. She earned a Master's of Arts in School Counseling from New York University. Nichelle is a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. Marianne Rozsa is a board member and chair of the Community Grants Committee at the Rotarian Foundation of Livermore. She is also a long-standing member of the Rotary Club of Livermore. Our moderator today is Charlene Anderson, who is the Associate Director for Tri-Valley Conservancy, and Grant Lifecycle Management falls within her roles and responsibilities. A member of TVNPA since joining Tri-Valley Conservancy in 2018, Charlene joined the TVNPA board in January 2001 and currently serves as the program committee chair. Charlene, I'll leave it up to you.
Good morning. I am very pleased to be moderating today's session. This is a program that I look forward to every year. It is a special place in my history with TVNPA, as this was my first program when I joined in 2018, coming out of the private sector to join Tri-Valley Conservancy. So very thrilled and so grateful for these grant makers to be on the call today to share so much expertise with us. So let's get started. We're going to start with Nadine, and we're going to do a round robin here of questions. And so Nadine, this morning, would you please start us off with talking a little bit about giving an executive overview of your company or the foundation and how long you've been in existence, including the areas that you give focus to.
Thank you so much, Charlene. I appreciate the invitation to join the panel today and to be part of this program for Tri-Valley Nonprofit Alliance. It's wonderful to see that we have so many participants, so thank you. I am thrilled to represent Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory and tell you a little bit about the two ways that the laboratory gives back money to the community. And I hope that by the end of our conversation today that I've made the distinction between the two programs and how you may be able to receive funds from those. So let's talk about the one program that has legacy for almost 50 years in our community. And that's our employee giving campaign. That's called Helping Others More Effectively. Most people refer to it as the HOME campaign. And I like that acronym because we do provide almost $4 million to our community through this employee engagement campaign. Over the years, like anything that's been around for 50 years, it's had some changes. And we'll talk about those a little bit today. And so maybe what you were familiar with, maybe as a past lab employee, may be different today because of the advancement of technology. And I'm very happy to have Davis here with CANDID to talk a little bit about how we use the profiles that are in GuideStar. And she'll talk about that. And then I will definitely amplify her conversation on that. So HOME is one way that the laboratory gives money, but that's through our employees. The other way the laboratory gives money is through our management company. So we are funded by the Department of Energy, and the Department of Energy has asked for a laboratory, and that for-profit entity is Lawrence Livermore National Security. They have a wonderful corporate responsibility policy, and that is that they give out $150,000.
So Nadine, we're having a little bit of a technical difficulty on your end. So I'm going to let the internet catch up with you. And oop, there you are. Live? Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay. So we lost you at about, I think you were talking about the HOME campaign and about $150,000. I think is where we lost you. Sorry.
So the HOME campaign is separate. That's our $4 million giving campaign through our employees. And the second way the lab gives out money is through Lawrence Livermore National Security, our for-profit management company for the laboratory. And they give out grants annually in the amount of $150,000. And that's an application process in the fall time. So I can expand on details of those, but I think it's important to make the distinction between the two. So why don't I end there and we'll go on to some of the other panelists. Thank you, Charlene.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Allison. The floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for including the Zellerbach Family Foundation in this conversation. We're really honored to be here and with all of you lovely, amazing panelists, so thank you. My name is Allison Magee. I'm the Executive Director of the Zellerbach Family Foundation. We are based in San Francisco. We are one of the older family foundations in the city and in the Bay Area too. We were established in 1956 with a $56,000 contribution. So we are going past 65 years now. We have quite a history of longevity. I'm only the fourth executive director in that 65-year period. So a lot of long partnerships and relationships that we have in the field. We fund in three areas. We fund in what we call improving human service systems, which is really children and youth who are system involved or at risk of being system involved. So juvenile justice, child welfare, children's mental health, those areas. We fund in immigrants and refugees, and we fund in the arts. Our community arts program is a little bit different. It is the only application-based program that we have. Those are micro grants that range up to $15,000. And they generally support public-facing performances or presentation of art. Right now, that program is in hiatus because of COVID. There are no performances happening, or there haven't been for the last 15 months. And so those grants have actually been paused and replaced with just COVID response grants, which are just general operating support grants to support artists and arts organizations up to about the same amount of money. We recognized the just dramatic impact that the last 15 months has had on the arts community. And this was just one way for us to provide some level of support to keep folks going until we can get back into the theaters and performances and everything else. Our other grants, what we call our general grants, they range higher. They average probably about $40,000, but can range up to past $100,000. Those grants are not application-based. They are by invitation, but we are very open and accessible. All of our contact information is on our website. Our staff and their email addresses and their phone numbers are on the website. You can easily reach us if you have questions about fit, if you have questions about our strategies and our programs, or even just other funders in the area. We are very accessible. We work hard to work with folks, even if it's not a fit for us, to find other funders that might be able to support your work. So it is by invitation, but our information is all available, and we are open and ready for questions if anyone has them. Did I cover everything? Is there anything else you wanted?
Yes, thank you, Allison.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. And good morning, Terry.
Hi, good morning. I am Terry Mock, and I am the Communications Manager for the Clif Family Foundation. And we have been around not as long as Zellerbach Family Foundation, but since 2006. And we have 3 focus areas. The first of which is community health impact. The second is protecting natural resources and safeguarding the environment. And the third, which has really emerged as one of our primary focus, is farm and food systems, food access, and food insecurity. Our coverage area is the United States and parts of Canada. We have very small grants in relation to probably our other panelists. We tend to focus on hyper-local groups that are really making a difference in their communities. So the average grant is about $10,000. And annually, our budget is a little more than $1 million. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. And Nichelle, good morning. From Clorox.
Hi, good morning. I am also really happy to be here and to share a little bit of information about our programs, our giving programs. And as I was listening, I think that the Clorox company probably is a mix of some of the other companies and foundations that we've heard from already. While the Clorox company has been around and was founded 108 years ago in East Oakland, the Clorox Company Foundation was formally established in 1980. And in that time, we've awarded grants and support to organizations at around $115 million. Our average grants are around 15,000, and there are a couple of ways that we support the community through grant making and other philanthropic programs. One of them, like Nadine's programs, we also have a workplace giving program that is probably around 52 to 53% of the foundation's budget. So our employees are really generous, and we support their passions and where they want to support with matching funds. Our grant making program, which is primarily focused in Oakland, which is where we're founded. But what I'll talk mostly about is our community development program, because that's the one that's most germane to most of the audience, I'm assuming, from that's on the call today. And that is to support the Pleasanton Tri-Valley area. So we award grants at the local level in Pleasanton, and to some extent, Livermore and Dublin. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nichelle. And it's great to have you back. And Marianne, good morning. Let's see if I can unmute you. Almost there. Marianne's using her husband's computer this morning, so we need to give her a minute to get her unmute. Unless, Kathy, can you take
if it's
her?
a PC, you could hit the space bar, and sometimes that will unmute you.
Well,
Okay,
there
I
she
think
is.
I'm there.
Yes, you
Can you hear
did.
me?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Charlene. I really appreciate it. And I'm so happy to be here to represent the Rotarian Foundation of Livermore. The Rotarian Foundation of Livermore, short RFL, was founded in 1987 by Marty Plone, a longtime member of the Rotary Club of Livermore, a former club president, and a local veterinarian. The foundation is comprised of the two Livermore clubs, the Rotary Club of Livermore and the Rotary Club of Livermore Valley. The purpose is to enrich the Livermore Valley through tax-exempt charitable outreach. Today, we have grown into over a 2 million sustainable enterprise to promote the common good, uniting us in growing healthy community. As a public charity, the foundation marshals contributions, fundraisers, corporate sponsorships, bequests, and professional managed investments to support charitable organizations already in our community and develop exciting new programs. Specifically, we focus on community grants to create opportunities for young people, promote community service, foster original ideas for new outreach, and improve the quality of life for the Livermore Valley community. We support projects which have the greatest impact per dollar spent. We are hands-on philanthropy, where we can participate in the service, see its effect, and watch it grow from year to year. The RFL is managed on a volunteer basis with our elected board of directors composed of community and business leaders, which are all members of the Rotary clubs. Our sweet spot for grants are between $3,000 and $5,000, and based on 4% of our corpus per our financial guidelines. In 2020, we awarded $76,824 in grants to 14 community organizations, plus another $10,000 in emergency grants of $5,000 each. This year, we awarded $81,500 to 22 organizations. And over the years, our giving in the community grants has exceeded $1,300,000. So kind of gives you some insight into the foundation. Thank you.
Marianne. So the next question I have, we're going to start, actually, Davis from CANDID and GuideStar, who are so fortunate to have this connection today, and I'm giving you the floor. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I'm actually delighted to have heard everyone else's story in the organization, because really, as you can see, we are joined with a wide range of types of grant makers and different strategies. And so I am the one of these that is not like the other, representing CANDID. For those of you that are not familiar with the name CANDID, you might be more familiar with our preceding organizations that we merged together in February of 2019, which would be Foundation Center, which ironically, Allison, I just learned Foundation Center was incorporated in 1956 as well, as the organization that tracked information about philanthropy and giving in the US. And then GuideStar, which was not incorporated in 1956, but I think in like 89, as the organization that was tracking information about the nonprofits. So after many, many years of thinking about whether this made sense, the organizations were merged to kind of create a complete view of the sector, because as one organization now, we are able to track over 2.7 million nonprofit organizations and over 170,000 foundations globally, along with over 14 million grants that have been made and a whole wealth of other information about the sector. So being able to centralize that information now, we're able to track trends in the field, whether it's regional or topic focused, and then where you might interface with us, it would be through some of our flagship visualization tools like Foundation Directory Online, which you probably access to navigate the research component of identifying the right funding partner, as well as say GuideStar profiles, where you might maintain your organizational profile, which then is shared across the field and is used by many institutions, and I'll go into more detail about that in a second, is used by many institutions to identify the right organizations that they should partner with as well. So I think that the other areas where I think our data really comes to bear is where just in hearing everyone here talk a little bit about some of the rapid response work that they did last year. One of our key audiences increasingly now is helping philanthropy to become more coordinated and more strategic. And that can only happen if you have the right information infrastructure for the field in order to be able to understand, as I mentioned, 2.7 million nonprofits, 170,000 foundations, all as independent actors in the field, and having a common place to understand what each other are doing and the kind of impact that they're trying to have. So the way to sort of think about CANDID is the information infrastructure for the social sector. And I would say predominantly US based now, but with a very strong global footprint and ambition to try and kind of centralize and structure the information for the sector. I will say that also, for your purposes, we maintain several portals that I think would be very interesting for your capacity building needs, like CANDID Learning, and I'll just actually share that with the group. There, you can take classes with us. Most of them are free. There's a whole resource. CANDID has at its roots a very nerdy librarian culture to it. In fact, some of our first jobs were literally like traveling around to regional tax offices with librarians that would cull through tax returns to index to kind of create a common directory of foundations in the field. So the ethos is very librarianish. And at CANDID Learning, you'll notice you can ask us questions. There's books you can pull from. There's classes you can take. There's a repository of research for the social sector that you can access. And then for the tools that you would use to identify potential funding sources, you can go to Las Positas Community College. They actually act as what we call a funding information network hub, where they make all of our databases available to the field free of charge. And so if you've never used Foundation Directory Online, I encourage you to either send me a note or go there, and there is somebody who's very well trained who can help you navigate that. And then I will lastly say, we'll talk about this in a second, the other piece of this that we will talk about is maintaining your GuideStar profile, and we'll discuss that a little bit more later. So
very important stuff, great resources. So thank you, Davis. Very excited. So Allison with Zellerbach, I am going to start the next round robin with you on the question specifically of how Zellerbach accepts and reviews grant applications. And once it's submitted, what is your recommendation on the best way to follow up?
So as I mentioned, it really depends on the grant. If it's an arts grant through community arts, there is a pretty standard application process. It all can be accessed online. We host workshops every quarter to just let prospective grantees know what the process is, what the criteria are, how we go about our decision making. Through community arts, we actually have a community arts panel which is comprised of 6 representatives from the arts community. They rotate every year. And the arts panel actually reviews all of those grant applications, and they make recommendations for approval to our board. It is a quarterly process. And again, it is all application based. And for those, we are very much accessible for folks who have questions during the application process. We have, grants management staff, we have our program executive for community arts who's available to answer those questions. And we're also available on the back end for folks who don't get funded for whatever reason. If you have questions, if you want to know about what was missing in your application, whatever it may have been, we are very much open and accessible to respond and talk you through that. Our general grants, like I said, are by invitation only. They are also made on a quarterly basis. And the way it works really is, once you develop a relationship with one of our program executives, and you all decide this is a fit, we want to move forward together, they will invite you to submit a proposal through our web-based system. So there are some general questions that are asked, program overview, organization overview, and so on. By the time you get to that point, though, there's already a lot of conversation and a lot of support that you've had with your program executive. So it's a little bit less mysterious in terms of what you're entering, what the program staff need to process the proposal and to get that in front of our board. So it's a pretty straightforward process. Sometimes it takes a quarter or two to develop that relationship, or even to find an opening in terms of our budget, right? Like I mentioned, we do have a lot of really long relationships with grantees. We support grantees for many times for years and years and years, which is fantastic. But the downside of that is that our budget is somewhat constrained because we don't have a lot of just new money coming in. So sometimes those relationships take a minute to form. It's not necessarily something that happens in the first quarter, but I would encourage folks to take a look at the website to get a sense of what our strategies are, and to reach out to the program staff or to me to get a better understanding of sort of either process, criteria, strategies, and so on.
Thank you, Allison. And Nichelle, for Clorox, how do they review and accept the applications?
Sure. So for our community development program, which again is our local grant making program that where we award grants in Pleasanton and about 25 to 30 other communities in North America. So everything outside of Oakland would be considered our community development program. And the way that works for our Pleasanton facility is, anyone who fits our focus areas of, youth development, non-sports related youth development, and cultural arts would be welcome to apply if they are in the Pleasanton, Livermore, or Dublin area. And the best way to get on our mailing list so that you can have the information is to email community.relations@clorox.com. And I will put that in the chat when I finish talking so that you have that resource available. And like Allison, I am available to answer any questions, to talk about your programs, to hear what you're doing, to see if there's a fit. We typically begin the process. This year was a little different. We had quite a few things. Well, like everyone, there's been just a little bit of distraction and things going on and adjustments and pivots. So our grant making cycle is a little bit off this year, but generally we send our applications out. We try to send them out in November, December, and they would be due in February, and we'd award the grants in March, April. So that is our general timeline. But again, folks are welcome to apply if they are in the Pleasanton, Dublin, Livermore area, and they meet our focus areas. They feel like there's a fit with our focus areas.
Thank you, Nichelle. Mary Ann for the Rotary.
Okay, I'm here. Our grants are opened up in September and are available on our website, www.rotarianfoundationlivermore.org. Application submissions are generally closed the first week of December, but this year, due to the pandemic, we kept the applications and extended the time frame to December 31st. You do need a Rotarian to sponsor your application from one of the clubs. Once an application is submitted, the applicant will be contacted by the grant chair, informing them that they did receive the application. If some part of the application has not met our guidelines or done incorrectly, suggestions are made to help the organization's grant be accepted. The grants are reviewed in January by a committee of Rotarians from both clubs. This year, there were 14 members of the committee. And after a decision is made by the committee, it is submitted to the Rotarian Board of Directors for approval. So that's our process. It's very simple, and the application is only 4 pages long, and it's pretty easy to fill out. Okay.
Thank you, Mary Ann.
Thank you.
And Terry with Clif Family Foundation.
Yeah, so the Clif Family Foundation is financially supported by Clif Bar and Company, and we have 3 cycles: February 1st, one just passed, June 1st, and October 1st. And it's a very simple application process at cliffamilyfoundation.org. And it helps, obviously, if you note that you have an employee that recommended you approach us, but it's certainly not necessary. And I have had the privilege and honor of speaking to hundreds of applicants over the past, I've only been with the foundation for 15 months, but it's truly been enlightening. There's a lot of social entrepreneurial pivoting that's going on. And so I'm just, really open it up to organizations locally who meet or who focus on our primary areas of community health, food, and natural resources and the environment.
Thank you, Terry. And Nadine, lab and home.
Thank you, Charlene. So I'm going to go ahead and make the distinction between the 2 programs again. So I'm going to start off with home, helping others more effectively, which is our employee giving campaign. There is no process for the nonprofits. As Davis will talk about GuideStar, a few years ago, actually it's been more like a decade now, we incorporated current technology into the platform, the computer platform that people make their donations through. And now employees have access to every single nonprofit that's in good standing with the IRS that is here within the United States. So in the past, the laboratory used to keep a list. So this is where the legacy of a program that's almost 50 years comes into play. Because sometimes nonprofits feel that they have to contact the lab in order for employees to have an opportunity to give to them. That is no longer the case. Employees can now give to hundreds of thousands of nonprofits throughout the country. And sometimes people do give abroad. I shouldn't say abroad, not globally. We do not do globally, just the nonprofits that are within the United States. But when I say that they want to give past the Bay Area, it might be because of parents in Pennsylvania and they've recently had hospice care and they want to give to that nonprofit, they can do so. So again, just to reiterate, the nonprofits do not need to do a thing, but it is so important. And that's why I'm thrilled Davis is going to talk about it, that the profiles are up to date so employees can look at those in GuideStar and make good choices. So that's the Helping Others More Effectively campaign. And the second opportunity for people to receive monies is through our management company, and they do award typical grants. And the dollar amount is $150,000 total. And they're usually awarded between maybe $500 to $10,000. And that process is open now, and it will close at sometime within the summer, usually mid-August. And that information can be found either on the lab's website or at Lawrence Livermore National Security's website. And if you just look at the headers, you'll see one that says community and for the lab's website, and you can find that there, or again through Lynn's, who offers those grant opportunities. The grant application, as Mary said, for Rotary, hers is simple, ours is extremely simple. It should take about 20 minutes for you to fill out because we want people to feel good about the process. And if they're awarded money, they'll be thrilled. And if they're not, we don't want to feel as if people had spent too much time filling out a grant application and it was a waste of their time. But the lab does have certain areas that it likes to focus in on when it awards those grants, but we have given grants in a variety of different areas, sectors. So not only just education and health services, but we have done the arts. We have even done for security concerns for nonprofits, that security issues that maybe a facility that takes care of women and children needed extra help securing their location. So I would fill out that application. Like I said, it's 20 minutes and you could be funded and you'd be thrilled for 20 minutes of effort to receive monies. But again, it's only $150,000. So hopefully that explains the distinction between the two and what the process is for the nonprofits. But I'm happy to take any questions that people might have. Thank you, Charlene.
Yeah, Nadine, that's great. And it really, I remember even sitting here 3 years ago thinking, oh, it's 20 minutes. And then having other grant writing experiences where it's hours, right? So I think that's really key, and metrics are so critical in that. And I know that we're going to address that with Davis in just a minute. The other thing that I recall, and so thrilled about this question, is the importance of storytelling. And I would love for Terry to start this question, because I know for Clif Family Foundation, that is at the heart of their application is telling that story. Terry, can you share with our members if there's a particular story you recall hearing from a nonprofit that was powerful and compelling? And can you share an example of why it works and why that technique is what Clif Family Foundation looks for?
Yeah, so I think storytelling really is the key, really, to getting others to understand your mission if you're a nonprofit. And I don't mean storytelling in terms of, you know, what your board members say or what your staff say. It's really, who are you serving and what are your clients? How are they impacted? So to be serious and to go on a serious note, after the George Floyd murder last year, we were approached by a Minnesota group, and they focused on teens and really supporting them and acting as a safety net. And so they were all about, you know, a sense of connectedness and really providing a safe space for these teens. And so they really focused on education. You know, a lot of these students did not have access to Wi-Fi, and so they set that up, and they really invited students to come. And the real thing that got my attention was that they gave agency to these students. And so these students used Snapchat, they used TikTok, and they said, hey, we're here, we're having a good time, we're studying, we're taking classes, why don't you join us? it's cool. And outside of that, they did receive a lot of success and a lot of students who came by. They also were able to, with the support of the Clif Family Foundation, to offer weekly food giveaways, with produce, fresh produce and staples such as bread and milk. And so really it was the students giving credibility to their peers that you could find a sense of community in this group, and don't be afraid to join, and please ask for help. So that really, for me, not only did it give agency to the students, but it really supported and bolstered the community on a grassroots level. And that really, I think giving your clients, in this case, high school students, the ability to tell their story was completely empowering.
Thank you so much. And Nichelle, with Clorox Family Foundation, do you have an example of storytelling?
I don't have a specific example of storytelling, but we do, the stories are really important and very impactful, like Terry said. And, I think that our focus is more around impact, overall impact, and what you're doing in the community, and the longevity and sustainability and that kind of thing. So, the storytelling, certainly the storytelling is very important as you're establishing relationship, and when you're out in the community. And now that we're moving more freely, I know that one person comes to mind, one executive director comes to mind that I've known for many, many years, and knew her even before I stepped into the role, and it from a previous job that had nothing to do with grant making. So anytime I see her, she always has a story to tell me about what's happening at their center and what they're doing. And it might be about a specific kid, it might be about the success of an overall program or the challenges that they're facing. But having stories in your back pocket that you can share anytime you see someone, not a 30-minute story, no one has time for that, but a quick 2-minute elevator pitch story that you can share with folks in the community, whether you have a funding relationship with them or not. But that it does draw people in, and it makes people want to know more. And to I know Nadine has talked a lot about the workplace giving program. Even having those stories, even just for the regular folks in your everyday life or people that you're meeting, you never know the kind of impact that you'll have in sharing the stories. And they might be compelled to volunteer, to give their money, to go home and talk about the story at the dinner table. You just never know. So having small snippet stories that you can pull out at the ready, at the drop of a dime, I think is really important.
Yeah, the humanizing, really making it real and visualizing seems to be one of those critical aspects of the grant making process and the application. So thank you for that. But we also look to metrics. Our grant makers look to metrics when we are making our applications or submitting our applications. And so I'd like to kind of shift a little bit over to Davis and ask her to share with us, CANDID is such an important resource and guide star in the grant making process. And so what should our members know about how they can leverage those resources and those databases essentially to tell the organization's story and showcase their work?
I'll just start as the data person on the team here, which is metrics are stories. And it's just how you interpret them. So So let me just break this up, because there's, 3 years ago, I would have been standing here and saying, oh, look, you're going to do your research in Foundation Directory Online to identify potential funding partners, right? And that is a key piece of how you as grant seekers will be interfacing with CANDID resources. And I can't underscore enough the importance of good research, because it's, especially in places like Livermore or places where you might have funders that you don't know that are funding in your area, and the ability to identify those that have activity and interest beyond the known network of the ones that are showing up at a grant maker panel like this, because everybody knows that they work in this area, right? So using that central repository to understand where there's money that is interested in the topics that you work on, where there's money interested in the region that you work on, where there's money interested in the focus of the types of populations you serve, all of that are key indicators of how you might establish a match. But then I think the other piece of this is really doing the homework to understand timing and types of grants and amounts of support, so that you don't come in knocking on the front door asking for the wrong type of money at the wrong time. It just looks like you haven't done your homework. So I remember one time Kim Klein was like, you're going to do your homework at some point. And maybe it's after you don't get a bunch of grants, but or when you do, but there is a homework component to this whole navigating institutional philanthropy piece. And so consider this if you are new to the homework component of this, I actually just put a class in that is a free class that we offer. The next one, it just happens to be July 21st. But there's all sorts of recordings and everything that you can find for if you're sort of new to this space. The other side, though, that is becoming increasingly, and I don't want to say more important, because it's equally important, is the fact that now you have the ability to not just maintain, but manicure an online presence that is seen by millions. Okay, when I say millions, I am saying the GuideStar profile, which was started, actually originally GuideStar was created as a directory, sort of like Foundation Center was a directory of the nonprofits. GuideStar, of the foundations, GuideStar was intended to take this widely disparate sector and kind of create a who's who directory using tax forms. And so all of you complete your tax forms, and in there you put your address and your programs and who your people are and all that stuff. But a lot of you are handwriting that stuff, and it used to be that the IRS was sharing that with flat TIFF files. And so it was really hard to kind of search and understand who the organizations were out there. And so GuideStar came in and played that secondary source, which is we pulled the information off the documents and made it searchable, so that you could say, how many nonprofits are there in California? How many nonprofits are active according to the BMF, et cetera. But recognizing that we can't just live on tax data, because tax data is not the kind of data that helps answer the kinds of questions that we have right now. What GuideStar developed an opportunity for nonprofits to actually take ownership of their profile and add a bunch of additional information about the organization. And over the years, there's been experimentation about what's important to include. And we've actually worked on a bunch of partnerships with several key other infrastructure organizations, like the Nonprofit Finance Fund and Equity at the Center and Change Philanthropy, to bring in critical pieces that we're asking organizations to tell their story. Right? To tell their story in a structured format. And so now what you'll notice is you get recognized along seals of transparency. Like, this is a call to transparency so when you claim your profile, the first thing you do is you just show GuideStar that you actually do have the right to add information about your organization. May I recommend, when you claim your profile, that you use your email address tied to your organization, because it's got the URL of your organization at the backside, it'll automatically get you in. If you sign up with your Gmail account, there's going to be some validation processes. So first tip is use your organizational email. Claim your profile, and then you go up through the seals of transparency, as we call them. The bronze level is literally gets you you can do that in 10 minutes. You claim it, you put your mission statement, and you can actually designate which population groups you serve as an organization. That's a really important piece right now. I think in terms of and I'll tell you, with the folks that are accessing this data, this is a quick way for organizations that are looking for funding partners, and that will be able to target organizations, especially if they're trying to work with certain population groups, that you become very visible very quickly. When you go to the silver level, you start putting in financial information. And one of the nice things about having this structured view is that, unlike web pages that, put the about over here and the finances here, and you have to tuck under there and find the programs and all that stuff. So all that, what's nice about the profile is it really does structure information so that everybody gets to go to the same place to find the same information about the organization. And then the gold level is where you talk about your programs, and in your programs you can designate specifically which populations are benefiting from the work of the organization, what are the primary subjects that you work on, and then the other thing that we had worked on, interestingly enough, it was an experiment. We didn't know how valuable this information was going to become in light of last year. And the national racial reckoning that I think has actually pushed the field to pivot into incorporating really important questions about including equity in the funding strategy, especially in thinking about equity tied to rapid response grant making in a COVID landscape. That's all that CANDID has been the go-to source for organizations that have been reaching out to us left and right saying, where are the organizations that are led by and or serving BIPOC communities that we might not have been funding in the past as a result of our haste or just the fact that we're sort of used to funding the usual suspects. And so the CANDID GuideStar profile has become that go-to source for information. So in your programs, you can designate who you're serving, and there is also a demographic survey that you can complete about who the demographic makeup of your organization. So demographics along race and ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, and disability status. For at the individual level, your co-leaders, at the senior staff, board, and staff level, it's aggregate figures that you can report up to the profile and of your organizational demographics. And then there's a bunch of equity practices that you can also signal that we worked on with equity at the center. So there's a wealth of opportunities to tell your story. And then at the platinum level, you can actually talk about the metrics and the impact that you're having as an organization. So it depends on how long it's going to take you, depends on kind of how much of the pre-work you've done. Organizations that have filled out a lot of proposals have likely had to tell tranches of this story anyway, so it's more of a cut and paste exercise. If you don't have an outcomes modeling to your work, then you might need to rethink about how you're tracking your impact before you report that up. So it can take anywhere from 10 minutes to several days that you might need to go back and add some information. I would say get as high on the profile as you can, because not only is the profile a go-to place for people who want to access information, but it is also a pass-through in that we populate Facebook, Amazon Smiles, all the donor advised fund platforms like Fidelity and Vanguard, and any kind of research that comes, through the field generally comes through us as well. And so what you're doing is not only are you visible to those who are coming to look at you, but you then pop up on all these opportunities for online visibility, where we've seen, what was some of the figures that I saw? I was just looking at this. So $215 million was raised on Amazon Smile in 2020. Almost $3 billion was raised on Facebook to about 1 million organizations, and that's all generated through the GuideStar profile, right? So the visibility. The other piece is that what you're going to start to hear, because we're in partnership with the League of California Community Foundations and several private foundations, is they're going to start encouraging you to maintain your profiles, because they're exploring ways to integrate that profile into the application to see how we can reduce the burden on applications moving forward, because so much of the profile information is what would be asked for in an application anyway. So we have some really interesting partnerships where we're going to start to see the time that you put into this will actually ultimately also save you time on an application later down the road. So it's really good to make a practice of manicuring that online story that you are telling about your organization, because it's fueling so many different conversations.
Yeah, and I think that the point of the fact that you have a lot of the pieces sort of everywhere, and kind of completing that profile is such a critical step to take. And once that seal is designated, you know, especially for folks who are platinum, throw it at the bottom of your organization signature and make sure your, you know, your community and your donors know that you have done that work, and that you know, GuideStar CANDID recognizes that. Nadine, I know you have a lot of insight into GuideStar and CANDID and how it can be leveraged. Did you want to add anything?
I did. And Davis, thank you so much for that thorough explanation of how important the profile is. So I like to work in processes. And so I think people that came into the presentation today, they're looking for a step-by-step, what should I do next? So I would recommend that if you represent a nonprofit organization, the first thing that you should do is go read your profile. And just see if it resonates with you. See if it needs some brushing off and cleaning up, because whoever wrote it literally wrote it for the IRS document when you incorporate it. And now there's a different purpose for that profile. And so, as Davis said, update that profile and make sure that you realize a lot of eyeballs are looking at it. Davis mentioned something else in her explanation, and she used the word fidelity. So I think we're all familiar with the fact that Fidelity is a financial institution. But what they have gotten in the business of doing is, for my employer, they take care of our 401k, but now they offer an employee giving campaign platform, the literal software that runs through our payroll in order to give monies to nonprofits. Many businesses are getting into this line of work. So Davis mentioned Fidelity, Salesforce, which we're familiar with in the Bay Area. They've also gotten into this work as well. And there's a number of for-profits. But what they've done is they know that they don't have to build that directory. They can use GuideStar's directory. They can use the IRS database, which then is the GuideStar as well. And what happens is they're writing software. So if you give to Girl Scouts of Northern California for a donation, it'll populate, it'll remember you gave to that organization. Oh, and here's some other like-minded, just like Goodreads. Oh, you read this book, you might like that book. Oh, you saw this movie on Netflix, you might like this. So they're pulling from that database. So if you're not familiar with that organization and a new one pops in and people read your profile of that nonprofit and it's not up to date, it may not resonate with them. So I would go ahead and make sure that you think about updating the profile, knowing that technology has advanced how we all give, and pay attention to the business side of things, because it could mean a lot of money for you that you're leaving on the table. Because
I'll amplify that for you, Nadine, which is we actually did a study in 2016, and organizations with profiles had 53% more donations than those that did not, right? So your fundraising success and the visibility around what you are telling the world about your organization and its successes, it's being seen. But once you're seen, like I used to say when I worked in the San Francisco office, it was like, you know, you go to a cocktail party and you meet somebody who thinks they're interested, the chances are they're going back and looking at your GuideStar profile as a kind of a backup after they meet you. They're going to look for your webpage and they're going to look for your GuideStar profile. So it's, I think, a really important exercise to make sure that it's that it is well maintained and up to date. I'll tell you, for instance, the Heron Foundation is a partner organization of ours. They don't even have an application anymore. They basically, what happens is when you go to apply, you put in your EIN number and it automatically fills out the application, but it fills it out because we use APIs. So it's just automatically pulls the information from the GuideStar into their grants management. It pulls your demographic survey, it pulls everything. And their grant agreement is now that they just require that you maintain a gold level current profile with complete demographic information of the organization, right? So they've taken out the application. It is the Common App, basically, right? So anywhere from that micro example to the macro to the other question, right? This, I think, where CANDID is really playing a role, and why the value of having that centralized repository is. Now I think there's a lot of equity questions on the table. Where is the money going and where is the money not going? And because we're tracking the grant making and we're tracking the entities of the organizations, who they are and who they serve, we're going to be able to have a much more interesting and solid conversation around sort of the equity in the fields around philanthropy and giving moving forward. So,
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, Davis. We're going to have a little bit of time at the end also to regroup and see if anyone wants to add to that importance of the GuideStar. Capacity building. Allison, I would love to hear a little bit from Zellerbach. Capacity building and funding for operations is a tough nut to crack when you know that there aren't unicorns doing the work, but it's hard to ask in a grant application for funding just for ops. So could you share a little bit about, whether your organization does support capacity building, and what's the philosophy on the best way to approach a grant maker for that?
Sure. So it's sort of two different questions. I think in general, in philanthropy, there's a sort of a reckoning happening with general operating support grants and an increasing acknowledgement that project-specific grants are really, really limiting for grantees. And so for Zellerbach, we are pushing to increase the number of general operating support grants that we are funding. I think we're up to 60 or 70% of our grants right now are general operating, because for this very reason, grantees know best where they need to allocate their funds. They know what they need to focus on. We have trusting relationships. So we trust that they're going to do what they need to do with the grant. That being said, I think that a lot of folks still give specific grants for capacity building. And I think that, for the capacity building grants are really important. And I think for grantees, what I would say is just to really be clear on what the need is. A lot of times funders, it's a strange thing. I mean, I have found that a lot of times funders will offer capacity building grants to increase your size so you can be, larger. So you don't have to work through a fiscal sponsor, you become a nonprofit. Sometimes grantees don't want that. Sometimes they want to remain small. Sometimes they don't even want to be a nonprofit. They want to work with a fiscal sponsor because nonprofit status creates a lot of added obligations and responsibilities that sometimes grantees don't want. They just want to do the work. And so I think for us, we really try to work with our partners to understand what are your real needs and how can we support you. So if they don't want to grow and they just want to focus on the population they're focusing on, I think that's great. And so I think having a real understanding of what you want for your organization in terms of that capacity building, and not to kind of back into those grants if they're out there because that feels like the best way to get money. So I would say that's a really important piece of it. And I would also say, the other reckoning that's happening in philanthropy, I think, is how we assess our partners' budgets, right? And their operating budgets, and kind of this expectation that your administrative overhead has to be a certain percent. And if it's not, we're not going to fund it. And we're only going to fund this portion of the work because this is what we're interested in. When the reality is that that's just not how organizations work with their budgets. And so when you're talking about your needs and your budget with your funder or a potential funder, to really be as straightforward as possible about what the costs are for you to do your work, right? And not to limit that, not to kind of talk it down just to get the funds, to be really honest about this is what it costs us to do this work. And I think that to the extent that funders are willing to have those honest conversations and participate, again, it means that the funds you're getting, you have more autonomy in terms of allocating those to where they need to go. And so if you get the general operating support grant, or if in that grant conversation you say, look, our board is in transition, right? We need support for that transition. I think some grantees tend to shy away from those sorts of conversations because they're worried it will somehow reflect poorly on the organization. When it doesn't. That's typical. It is part of the work of an organization to have those sorts of transitions in leadership, or to even have challenges. And to the extent that we're really open and honest about those, then funders can really get you closest to what you need in terms of funding. I hope that makes sense.
It does, and it's incredibly valuable for us. Again, it kind of goes down the line with transparency, right? So
absolutely. And just the other thing, I mean, we really work hard to have trusting relationships with partners that are based on mutual trust and not just one-sided, right? And I can say we've had grants in the past that we have funded, put out a $50,000 grant, and a week later the organization imploded because there wasn't this honest, open relationship about their needs. And those are the most heartbreaking stories, because had we known, maybe we could have done more, maybe we could have done more to support or sustain the organization. And so the more we know and the more communication there is, I think the better the support can be.
thank you. Mary Ann, I'm going to start this quick round robin. I'm just going to go round for everybody on this one, because I think this is such a critical piece for our members. Can you just start us off with, once a grant is awarded, how do you like to be stewarded?
How do we like to be students? What question was that? Because I have some.
It's a question, well, it's 6 on our list, but it's really just around, do you like to come out to our programs? Do you want us to send you pictures, shout you out on social media? What's the best way to maintain and show gratitude for that extension of grant making?
Oh, okay, great. We generally, you're talking about how our awardees come back to us expressing their appreciation. We generally see our awardees thanking us through social media channels, and then their own Facebook, their Facebook pages, and also we see them thanking us with newspaper articles. And we've also been invited out to see what the grants are accomplishing, and our Rotarians volunteer their time to assist grantees where it's applicable. The recognition is really great for us, because when these organizations are thanking us, it's also putting out the information to the community in general. And the public becomes much more aware of our foundation. It generates additional donations to enhance our corpus for community funding. So we always appreciate, our awardees mentioning us wherever they can, word of mouth, in print advertising, great on the internet. So basically we encourage all of that. And we've made some great strides by our organizations mentioning us when they're doing presentations. So that's kind of where we are.
We're very happy to have the sponsorship today for this program from all 3 Rotary organizations within the Livermore. So thank you for that. I'm just going to push this out to the panel, see if anyone wants to add anything from the grant maker perspective. I know it's all about the shout outs, but if there's something unique that any of you would like to add, I'm going to open it up real quick. Yeah, Davis.
I was actually thinking about this question because obviously we got the questions ahead of time. There was no gotcha questions here. And one of the things that I think I want to underscore, because it's something that I think that I'm definitely seeing across the field now, is the culture of philanthropy has changed. And I think the power dynamics of the culture of philanthropy has changed, in that you are not working with you are working with professional staff who are equally committed to solving issues, and they have incredibly finite resources to do it. Now, this isn't a, pandering to wealthy people any dynamic at all. This is, you are professionals, you do your job, you would want to be communicated with integrity and confidence, and your partners in the funding field are also trying to accomplish the same thing, right? So if we shake the money component of this, and we think of this as working in concert to solve problems, and you approach the relationship from that lens, I think that it makes everything work better. We at CANDID, we work with so many foundations, and I can tell you that, like, it is almost entirely organizations really trying to make a difference and trying to find the right partners to do that job. So I would encourage you to be confident as the content experts in the areas that you work, to represent the need and to show the success, but approach it as even keel. This is these are your partners. Once the grant agreement has been signed, that's when they've said, wow, we're really investing in you because we think that you are going to be able to deliver, and we will double down on you if you communicate.
Yes.
So that would be my like frame shift on how to think about the stewarding of a grant.
Thank you, Davis. Allison, can you speak a little bit to how important collaboration is between agencies and where you've seen it work before? And if there's a breakdown that you've seen as well.
Between nonprofit agencies or in general?
Yes, nonprofit agencies.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, collaborate. I mean, I think that's kind of the theme of this conversation, where it sort of feels like it to me. For us, well, for us, we're particularly interested in cross-sector collaboration, right? How are folks working with the public sector to do what they want to do or what they need to do? How are they working with even the private sector to some extent? And how are we helping to foster those relationships? Collaboration is something that it feels very inherent with our partners and the work that we do, and they all often know each other. And when they don't, we actually work to make those connections ourselves. So if we have one of my program executives will see she's working with a new potential grantee that doesn't have strong partnerships, we'll make those introductions to other nonprofits to say, hey, did you know that so-and-so is also doing this work? And there's a lot of really great potential for sort of overlap here and for more support. So we really work to help introduce and foster that collaboration between grantees and other organizations that aren't even our own grantees. I think that it just makes the work stronger. It makes the impact that much greater. It doesn't mean that you have to, when you're reaching out to a funder, have to like create this list of people that you're working with because that's what we want to see. It really is about authentic partnership and learning from each other and sharing what we're learning with others. And so that's really what we're looking for in terms of collaboration, not just a list of other organizations that might touch you in some way. And I just also want to just give a little shout out to Davis. I don't manage many grants at all, but I do come into I learn about new organizations all the time. And the first thing I do when I learn about a new organization is I go to GuideStar, I go to CANDID. That's the first thing I do. I do look at the 990, but I look at the whole profile. I mean, it pulls me in and I'm able to see everything about that organization. So I just think I don't underestimate the value of that resource. I use it in passing. My staff use it all the time. It's just something that for us, it's like using our email. It's just something that we do every day. So the more you can do to build that profile, the better it is just for becoming sort of part of the conversation that's happening between funders.
Thank you, Allison. All right, I'm going to move us on to a question that I think is important for all of us to hear from each of the organizations. And it comes down to what happens when we're turned down for a grant. I mean, it happens, right? You put all of this effort in, and then, you know, it's really important, I think, to maintain the partnership. But what's the best way for each of your organizations to be approached if we're turned down? Do you recommend soliciting feedback on the application itself? Do you recommend sending maybe an email and asking to have a phone conversation? And I would love to start with Nichelle and welcome her input on this question.
Sure. You know, certainly no one likes to be turned down. That doesn't feel good, especially if you don't have the 20-minute application like the lab does. So, you know, that's why the homework that Davis mentioned earlier is so important. Just doing your homework, and Google is your friend. Spend the time up front finding the right funders that are supporting the work that you do. You know, so if you want to invest some time, that's where I would say invest your time, is doing the research to figure out which organizations are going to be most interested in the work that you're doing. Then once you get past that and you still get the denial, or you're not awarded the grant that you would hope so much for, certainly reach out to me via email. That's the best way. I'm happy to then either cover off over email or set up a call, set up some time to discuss. And you know, I know part of the question was, will you be honest about, you know, whether or not there's never going to be a chance? Yes, I will be honest and share that it's probably not likely that we would support in a particular area. And, you know, if there's any question or you want to talk about your program before you invest the time, I'm also happy to have that conversation as well up front. But again, doing the research to, you know, spend some time finding the organizations that are going to support the areas that you're most interested in, I think is so important. And what I have found sometimes is that organizations, it's difficult to hear the no. It's difficult to, so even when the research has been done and you've had the conversation up front and you're saying, you know, I'm saying, I don't think it's a fit. These are our focus areas, you know, and I lay it all out. I'm surprised often that I still might receive an application, even though I thought I was very candid by saying, no pun intended, Davis. I thought I was very transparent in saying this might not be a fit for us for various reasons, to still receive an application. So I would say, you know, be open to hearing the no, even though you might think it's a great fit. If the funder doesn't think it's a great fit, guess what? It's not a good fit. So, you know, be open to hearing the no, and invest the time in another organization.
Thank you.
Don't keep trying to poke the bear. Just move on.
Don't make an enemy out of it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Terry, what about you for Clif Family Foundation? And then Davis, I'll redirect it over.
Yeah, so I I don't like saying no, obviously. It's not comfortable, but I will say that part of doing homework is also going to whoever you're applying to, go to their website and look at their, who have they funded list. Right there is a wealth of information. And, we tend to look at groups that are, are you in more than 2 of our focus areas? Or are you partnering with groups? You could be a bike group that partners with a food bank. Those kinds of connections are so important to us, especially what the pandemic unmasked. So, and I will also say that a large majority of people who apply to the Clif Family Foundation are not accepted on the first round. So don't be afraid to, apply more than once. And I'll be honest, if I have reached out to you via email, that means that you've made the short list. So please, if you're turned down that first time, ask me questions, email me. The first time at bat is not necessarily going to, be a home run.
Thank you. Great. And Nadine?
I would say, again, the 20-minute application is in place to not make anybody feel bad. So I think the Clorox Foundation, when you have to say no, say, hey, I know a place where you could apply and it takes 20 minutes. So feel free to send them our way. But so hopefully our intent to give out the money is to make people feel good about their missions and their causes and the work that they're doing. It's never to make them feel as if they weren't validated. So for us, that was the philosophy behind the 20-minute application. I realize other entities, and thank you for letting me just be a little bit humorous with the Clorox Foundation, but need to have more extensive applications. But again, the home campaign, it is really your relationship with our employees. And the employees are the ones who make the decision where they want to give their money. So again, it's that relationship building that is so important and having high integrity. But hopefully that answers your question. Thank you.
Yes. And Davis, I saw that earlier you wanted to add something.
Well, in keeping with the theme of homework and research piece, a lot of times we hear about organizations that apply and say, we are the only ones that do this. And because they haven't done their homework, they don't know that there's actually like a shop down the street that's doing the same thing and that's got great results. And they haven't taken the time to partner with them or to see what's differentiating about these 2 organizations. So in the spirit of homework, I would encourage you all to think about answering 2 questions, or 1 question that is 2 parts. What is unique and vital about the work that you do? And in the spirit of doing that, what will force as an exercise is to think about who else is operating in your space and whether or not there are natural partnerships for you. And you can identify those organizations 2 ways. One is you can go to Foundation Directory online and you can look up, as Terry was saying, the grants of organizations that have received along the same line and see, those that are geographically close to you, that are topically close to you, that are focused close to you. And then you can go to their profile and look at them, or you can go to their webpage and look at them. Or you can also go to GuideStar and look up their search queries by NTE codes and also geographic area. So you can start to get a sense of who the players are beyond your known network, so that when you approach a foundation, who, by the way, they are receiving all the applications from all your peers, and they have a pretty high level view of this, you can enter the space really as a knowing partner of what the landscape looks like. And you can also have a clear statement about where you position yourself in relation to this landscape. And so I think it's a good exercise in the homework space, but not only that, you can also look at their grants and you can see who's funding them, and you might identify some additional funding sources as well. So it serves as a professional exercise and sort of market research. It helps you to differentiate yourself, and it might lead to other funding. So keeping with the spirit of research.
Thank you. And I do think this is a really important question to understand how different organizations approach, like to be approached even after not necessarily being awarded. So Allison, do you have a few words on this as far as maintaining that relationship, or what you would recommend to our members?
In terms of when a denial is received, or a...
Yeah, if we're turned down for a grant, what's the best, what are your preferences?
Again, I mean, for the arts, I think it's our arts grants are the application-based grants. And so, you know, I think similar to what other folks have said, folks might apply once or twice before they get funded. I would say not to give up and to keep trying, and to reach out to the staff, reach out to the program executive for the arts, to find out what was missing, what could have been conveyed differently or better. We're very, very open and very honest about that feedback. But I think that Nichelle's comments are also important. Like, don't ask if you're not willing to receive the feedback. So I think, you know, we'll be really honest and really supportive. Again, for the community arts, especially, folks will apply once or twice or multiple times before funding is received. And then many, many organizations in the arts are funded for years through community arts, and they receive a lot of support. And I will also say for community arts, because they are smaller grants and they're application-based, many, many arts organizations receive their first arts grants through Zellerbach and the community arts grants. And so we don't have expectations of sort of that, you know, you're in this perfect state in terms of your organization or your art or your work. It really is geared towards newer artists and arts organizations that are entering the field. And then I would say, other than that, you know, because our other grants are really our invitation, once you receive that invitation to apply, that is the short list that Terry's talking about. It's unlikely, unless there's been some major change or miscommunication or misunderstanding, it is unlikely that that grant gets denied in the end. So we work really hard to make sure that once we get to that invitation stage, that those grants, you know, are aligned with our strategies, are aligned, point towards our goals, and that ultimately our board will be able to support willingly. So I would say that the relationship is the most important thing, the outreach, the communication, the honesty about where you are, what your challenges are, and what you really need at this point for your organization to thrive.
Great, thank you, Allison. And Marianne, just to wrap this up, for Rotary, if we're turned down for a grant, what is the best approach for us to solicit feedback and input so that we're successful the next round?
Well, we have turned down grants in the past, and basically the criteria is usually because the organization is outside the Livermore area, which is our foundation's focus. So we do tell people right up front that, you know, there's not a possibility that we're going to fund your grant. If we see potential for an applicant, we will actually help to rework their application and tell them what they need to do, and have them again look at what our standards are. We do have like 6 items that we want them to look at in their grant. And it's pretty easy for them, with direction from us, to help correct that application so it will be more applicable to be funded. There is some thought that sometimes we have funded several organizations on kind of like a continuing basis. And sometimes we actually use that as a tiebreaker when we have a new organization that has come on board and we see great potential there. We may use that as a tiebreaker and fund that organization rather than a repeat organization. This year, we were very happy to be able to fund or partially fund the 22 applicants that we got this year that we got. It was such a terrible year for so many people. We tried to be just extra generous with our grants. And I think the grants that we did this year was $81,500. That's the most that we have ever funded in one of our years. So it just goes to show when there's a need out there, we really try to meet it. And we never lead somebody on. If there's an application that's not ever going to make it, we just are upfront with them because it's not fair for them to do that work and be turned down over and over again.
Great. Thank you so much, Mary Ann. We have about 10 minutes for some more Grantmaker panel time, and then we're going to open it up for live Q&A. But this next question, I'd like to direct it first to Allison and then Nadine. I'd love to hear an example of the best project you've ever funded. What would be considered a best-in-class grant program?
Thanks. I'm just going to quickly make one more point on the fit conversation. And I think what's really important is to make sure when you're applying for funding that it's not just about whether it's a fit for the funder, but whether it's truly a fit for you. And I think a lot of times grantees feel they have to kind of back into grants based on the criteria or the strategies or whatever it is that the funder is prioritizing. And I'll just say, if you can see that it's not a fit, don't re-articulate your work in some different way to try to appease the funder, because it's not time well spent for you. And ultimately it's not going to work out with the funder. So I would just say it's just like a job. You want to make sure that the employer wants it to be a fit for them, but you want to make sure it's a fit for you as well. And so I just want to put that out there because I think there's also an inclination many times for grantees to kind of want to back in to grant opportunities, even if it's not totally aligned with what they're doing. So I'll stop with that. In terms of, I will not talk specifically about a particular grant because all different funders have different, again, strategies and goals that they're working towards. But I think for us, the sort of best-in-class grants and the best-in-class partnerships that we have with grantees are those that are really based on honesty and the relationship that we have. And so for us, it's great when grantees are able to report back and say, like, this was exactly what we thought. We were really successful. We ticked all the boxes. We reached, that's really, really great. But for me, what's most important and even more valuable is when a grantee says, like, wow, this came out of left field. We had no idea the environment was going to change in this way, or the situation was going to change in this way, or our organization was going to change in this way. And here's what we did to pivot. Right? Here's what we did to respond to that change. And here's where we are now. And that might be, we're not where we thought we'd be because of that, or we're actually much stronger for it. So I think it really is about the articulation of, this is what we're trying to do. And here are how all these different environmental factors may or may not be influencing that. And that gives us a better sense of how we can better support you with our grant making and our relationships with others. And that learning that you're experiencing and you're going through, that's the core of the work, right? That learning is the core of the work. When you're able to say, this was a challenge we didn't expect, but here's what we did differently to respond, and it worked or not, that really is how we get to impact down the road, right? So I think rather than talking about a specific example, those sorts of relationships and incidents that we have with grantees, we find to be the most valuable because it really is about the learning and how we're applying the learning to our work.
Thank you. Thanks, Nadine.
So I'd love to tell you a very good story for our community. When Lawrence Livermore National Security was named as the management company for the lab for the Department of Energy, they decided that they wanted to start a grant program. And That's the grant program we have today. And when they started it, it was 100,000, and now it's more than that. So it's grown over the years, and they do see the value in it. But one of the first recipients to receive a grant was a school teacher here in Livermore. And many people know Sue Johnston. She's a science teacher for Livermore Valley Joint Unified School District. And she wrote an application asking to be funded to study how they could develop a curriculum for students to learn engineering. And we haven't used the word yet, at least I haven't heard it, reputation. So reputation's important. Organizations have reputations, but it's the people that represent the organizations that have the reputations. And Sue has a phenomenal reputation in our school district. And she wrote this application saying she really needed some time to work with other teachers to talk about how they could incorporate this into education. We funded her at the highest level at that point, which was $15,000. And we said, we value the idea that you want to take time in your day to study this, and you need funding for that, to do the research, to talk to other people, to look at resources, to talk about processes. And she came back a year later after she was funded and incorporated an engineering program into the high school. From there, it launched into the entire school district. We now teach engineering to kindergarten students all the way through high school. Not only does our school district do it, but the local school districts of Pleasanton and Dublin also do it. And it's called Project Lead the Way. And they adopted this program. And it is so robust that our students that are kindergartners don't even know they're learning engineering, because it's building something, designing something, then going and playing with it. But they're learning engineering. And that started from a teacher with a $15,000 grant that expanded into what we refer to as feeding the pipeline, supporting STEM. And I can't think of a better example than of spending $15,000 for someone who had a phenomenal reputation that we wanted to support. So I hope that gives you an understanding of what we feel is a value back to our community.
Absolutely. It's a very unique story, and I appreciate you sharing that. You know, it's important to make the ask, right? All right, I'm gonna just wrap this up with one final question, and I'll ask Terry to kind of start us up with the wrap up, and then we'll go into live Q&A. Terry, and for all of you, what are the final words of advice for our nonprofit community here? Anything that you'd like to add for our consideration?
What I want to say is that you all are doing such important work, and you are the content experts, and it's how you communicate that. I think if anything, the pandemic has revealed that many of our nonprofits are doing the work. They're essential frontline workers. They are ensuring that our communities are being fed, and that our, children and families are, safe and as, healthy as they can be. And so I don't mean to say that you should be cocky, but you should definitely be confident when you apply after you've done your research, that, you are confident that this is a good fit. And Allison's right. Don't try to squeeze into what you think a foundation is looking for. Be genuine and authentic.
Great. I'm just going to go around my screen now. Allison, a few words?
I say yes to everything, and we're grateful for all the work that you do. It is, it's the nonprofit sector and the service sector. It is it's challenging to always have to be sort of hustling, right, for funding and for grants. And we acknowledge that. But the work you do is phenomenal. And please just be open, be honest, and be willing to reach out. Because I think a lot of funders want to hear about what you're doing. And if you're reluctant, you're just never going to know. So please.
Thank you. And Davis, a few words?
Yeah, I'm yesing everyone. I feel very honored to have been a part of this, and just, use our resources. We're a nonprofit like you. Our game is to support you and to build your capacity and to get you the information you need to do good. So, we are set up with many access points to help you along your fundraising and general organizational capacity building, along with managing your profile. Anything we ask you to do, we support you in doing. So, use those resources. And there's even a support channel where you can ask questions of a librarian for books to read and classes to take and everything. So use us. We're here for you.
Fantastic. And Mary Ann?
Yes, this has been wonderful hearing from all of these different foundations and all the great work that's happening out there. We welcome all nonprofits to submit an application during a grant period from September to December. And our two clubs make the decisions on which nonprofits will be funded. And you might want to go and check out our community Livermore Valley Community Report, annual report for 2019 and 2020. Just check it out on our Rotarian Foundation Livermore.org site. And it really gives you really an insight into how the foundation works. It goes into the different grantees that were received grants for the 2019 and 2020 year. It also tells you about some of the ongoing projects that we have, like the Children's Holiday Party, which we do in conjunction with CAPE, the dictionary project that we have given dictionaries to every third grade students in Livermore for the last 10 years. That's changing into the literacy program because dictionaries are kind of becoming a thing of the past. So we're going to go into a literacy program, and that's kind of in the stages of putting it all together, and hope we'll have it, probably in this next year. We'll have that going strong. We also give STEM scholarships to 6th through 8th grade students that are maybe have disadvantaged, and that's another thing that we do. And let's see what other program that's about. Oh, also, I wanted to mention that we have a music scholarship program for students in our schools. It's just amazing. We just had that program with students receiving their scholarships this past month. So just wanted to say, please go and check us out. You can find out all about us on our community project that we just put together, so that you can see what we do and how we act and see all the fun things and wonderful things that we've done in the past. And I'm just so great to be here and hear from all of the different organizations. So it's been a wonderful morning.
Thank you so much. Nichelle, final words, advice?
Sure. Just do your homework. Google is your friend. And I'm happy to be here as always. And feel free to email me. I did put the email in the chat. Happy to talk about your programs. And no one likes saying no. And so know that if we do have to say no, it's for a good reason. And so, that's it. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Nadine Horner.
Yes, I would just like to say that when we can all meet in person, I think it's so beneficial for nonprofits to come together and talk to one another. through the networking that takes place to talk to people about, hey, what sort of funding sources have you been able to appreciate? Are you aware of this? Or can I read your application? Remember, sharing happens in a lot of different ways, and networking in person is so important. So continue your membership with Tri-Valley Nonprofit Alliance. Certainly when we can come back and meet in person, start talking to people about their achievements, their accomplishments, their funding sources. And I think it will benefit all of us if we continue the conversation and work together.
Thank you, Nadine. It's just great to have everybody. This was such a wonderful interactive, well, we're going to move into interactive, but just thank you so much for taking the time to share your expertise and knowledge. I know that we have answered most of the chat questions, and I just want to open up via raising of the hand through the icons here. And maybe Kathy and Carol can help me if you see anybody, because I am in panel mode.
Yeah, so Pat Coyle has his hand up.
Oh, fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much. I just want to thank the panel. This was just outstanding. I really appreciate Marianne representing Rotary and the Rotarian Foundation of Livermore. And I have a shout out to Nadine. We shamelessly copied that 20-minute application from them. And that's basically how the Rotarian Foundation of Livermore has streamlined and tried to make their application less onerous for people, particularly when, as Marianne mentioned, the sweet spot for us is typically a 3 to 5K kind of a grant. You don't want people spending an inordinate amount of time when the payoff is relatively small. So thank you, Nadine, and thank you all. I just am really delighted to hear about the innovations with CANDID and the way that this has now rolled up GuideStar and the foundation, et cetera. That just sounds like a terrific set of resources. Thanks for bringing us up to that fresh information to us. And with that, I'll just thank you again.
Thank you, Pat. Anybody else?
I think there was one. I'll ask Davis if you can talk again about how the CANDID database is available at Las Positas College for people who are local, and if they're not in the Tri-Valley region, are there other community colleges where the database is accessible?
Absolutely. So that first link that I sent you, CANDID Learning, there is a link on that page. You can type in right at the top, it says find us. And when you go to find us, you can type in your zip code wherever you are. Say you're traveling and you just want to do a little research and you want to see if there's a location where you can access our resources, type in the zip code and it'll give you the list of the closest locations similar to Las Positas. And so this is a program called the Funding Information Network. And it's a way for us to make our resources available at the local level for those organizations that might not be able to afford a subscription, sort of that public library model that I was telling you about. And so Las Positas, actually, we're in conversations with them. They're going to be going up a notch in terms of their status as a fin. Sort of there's access fins and then there's training fins. And because you have such a vibrant community there, and actually a whole host of folks that are helping to make it a more vibrant community, there's sort of been a collaborative effort between several key players to take it up to the next level. And so Las Positas is going to start to be able to offer some of our core curriculum, some of our core introductory curriculum, as well as access to 3 databases, which would be Foundation Directory Online, Foundation Maps, which is a tool that really, it's my favorite tool. It's actually, I consider it like the backdoor to philanthropy. It's just, you look directly at where the grants have gone, and then you look at the foundation profiles because you can see so much more information and nuance. Like a funder might say, hey, we're an education funder. And in truth, like they only do like adult education, right? And so you can really see that their grants are really in the $250,000 range for adult education, in which case that just either makes or breaks the match kind of thing. So Foundation Maps is a great tool. And then what will always happen is that there'll be somebody who has been trained by CANDID. We offer free training to them every year to make sure that they know the latest on how to navigate. So they will be kind of your local point person. Now, in the days of COVID last year, we were making our databases available through those funding information network locations. Like if you had a library card, you could then get into our databases remotely. We've changed it a little bit this year in that you can access it remotely, but you get a 24-hour access pass per month. So I encourage you all to make sure that you're sort of ready to do research when you log in, because you'll be able to log in for 24 hours, or you can go to the location. Libraries and everything are opening up now again. So you can go on site or you can access remotely at this point.
Thank you. Lisa Tromovich has her hand up. Livermore Shakes.
I guess one last thing is you can also just get a 1-month subscription to Foundation Directory Online. You don't have to buy a whole year. So if you want the comfort of your own home to do the research, get a month-long subscription, do your homework, close it up, and be done.
Thank you. It's been a great panel. I got pages of notes. It's fantastic. And thank you, Nadine, Nichelle, Marianne, for partnering with Livermore Shakes in our education and cultural programs. I have sort of a tangential question. Is there a way that we, funders and recipients, can partner and go out into the world and encourage other corporations to do what you all are doing? We're so privileged to be in a wealthy nation, and I think increasing the amount of philanthropy would benefit all of us. And I don't know, I'm envisioning, are there places where we're literally, when we're live again, standing together, presenting the partnership? You know, we talked about how we maintain our relationship and steward our relationship, but is there a way for us to go out into the world together and saying, Zellerbach, Livermore Shakes have done this together, and let that, so the collaboration that we experience, let that be the image, and encourage more corporate support. I guess I'm presenting an idea, hoping that some of you already had the answer.
I can, Lisa, I'll field that question for you. And thank you for the acknowledgement that the lab has been a supporter. Scientists and the arts go hand in hand. So we have been hopefully very good supporters of yours and other art organizations in our community. In fact, most of our resident companies at the Bankhead Theater were started by lab employees. So I think what's important to know is most corporations do have a giving program in one capacity or another. And I think this is where your research comes in. And I think what I just said resonated because I'm seeing a lot of nodding of heads. But for example, one very large corporation in our community actually doesn't give out a lot of smaller grants. They actually believe in startup businesses. So you might not have heard of them giving to nonprofits, but they actually fund small micro loans to startup companies to start an idea. So they're in business. They're definitely making a big profit. This corporation, I don't want to name it by name, but it's a large one. It is a software company in our community, but they give out funding to other businesses. So sometimes you're not aware of what they give, but if you do a little bit of research on the company, you'll find out. Or if they're Chevron Corporation, I can mention that one. They do have funding in our community, but it is for educational purposes. And even though it's global, they are headquartered in our community, and we get a little bit more money than other locations because they're funded here. But their programs center around education, and I think they're actually quite good about how much they give back. But most corporations do give money, Lisa. So I don't know so much as far as encouraging other corporations to step up and start to do that, as much as it is just to tell the story of who you've partnered with. And that's just good marketing and good public relations to do that.
Well, I think, are we about out of time? It is noon.
Yeah. Davis has her hand up. Did you have something to add, Davis?
Yeah, I just had a thought of something to share with you all because I've just been thinking about things to share with you all. You know, one thought that came to mind is you'll notice I put in the chat the directory, the United Philanthropy Forum directory there. And, you know, one of the things that's probably important to know about is what group of funders are thinking collectively about the issues that you work on. So there's basically philanthropy serving organizations, grant makers for the arts, grant makers for health, grant makers in Africa, grant makers for all sorts of things. So I encourage you all to take a look at the directory there and see what of those PSOs are topically or regionally. I mean, there's Northern California grant makers, for instance, that would be the regional focused PSO, but then there's also topical and identity and issue-based PSOs out there. And the reason is that those groups of funders are thinking very strategically about those issue areas. They're often putting out publishing work on this. They're also often seeking advice and partnership with organizations that have expertise in this. And they have conferences, they do programs. And so as a content expert to gain visibility in the space, you know, that's an important way to sort of lift yourselves above Livermore into that broader conversation around these issue areas, and does bring a lot of credibility, and not just for fundraising, just because you're doing good work, you know. So I encourage you to kind of be aware of those conversations around you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much. I'm so thrilled we actually made it to 12 o'clock, kind of right on the dot. So that's exciting. Again, I hope to see you all back next year for our annual program. And I hope that everyone has success in their pursuits of funding their various programs. And Kathy, is there anything you want to add before we wrap up our program for the month?
I just wanted to thank you all again. Sorry, my voice. Thank you. It was really a wealth of information, and it will help make our nonprofit community stronger and thereby improve our communities as a whole. So we really appreciate you showing up and giving your time. And to everyone who showed up and participated, I know 2 hours is a long program over Zoom. That is no easy feat to sit through, but it was definitely engaging. So thank you for keeping it that way. And I'm going to turn it over to our board chair, Carolyn, who wants to just say a quick word about Rotary.
Thank you very much, Kathy. I'll make this very fast. I put it in the chat. So the 3 local Rotary clubs were very proud to sponsor this because we really give back to our local community, but there are Rotary clubs throughout the US. So if you're not based here in the Livermore Valley, reach out to your local Rotary club. That's a great source of funding and also human resources, because Rotarians like to volunteer. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day, and we'll see you at our next program, hopefully.
Bye. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, panelists.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, TVNPA.
Great job, Charlene. Wonderful. Master of
Thank
Ceremonies.
you.